Nice to meet you.
Glad you all could come.
Yes.
It's a wonderful
You don't want
We have never $10.
You're a university of Baltimore.
Administrator Ginsburg, Associate Justice of the Supreme Court of the United States. As you can see from tonight's program, which is on page 3, we will be having our introductions and our award ceremony before the main course is served. Dinner will be served after Justice Ginsburg delivers her remarks, which I know everyone is looking forward to tonight. So for now, enjoy your salads. The bar will remain open all night. And it is my pleasure to introduce the President of the Women's Bar Association of Maryland, Nancy Sacitano.
Good evening, everyone. I am so happy to see all of you here. It's a very special night for me, and there is a lot of material in your program tonight about Rita C. Davidson. Judge Davidson had many firsts in her life, and many of those are outlined there for you. But tonight, what I wanted to share with you about Judge Davidson are some things I believe she has in common with Justice Ginsburg. Justice Ginsburg and Judge Davidson actually grew up in Brooklyn. They did not know one another at the time, but their neighborhoods were very close. Justice Ginsburg went off to Harvard. Judge Davidson went off to Yale. After graduating, they both encountered challenges in their lives as their professional lives had been looking for positions as attorneys. But I think what is most striking, at least in where we are in the world today, and the law, particularly in 2014, is that things that Judge Davidson stood for, and things perhaps we all should stand for, are also the things that Justice Ginsburg stands for on the Supreme Court. Judge Davidson had a role in effecting change by speaking contrary to the majority. It was well known that Judge Davidson never affirmed a death penalty sentence during her time on the Court of Appeals. She stuck by her principle despite knowing she was sometimes the only person dissenting from a death penalty sentence, and she received quite a bit of criticism for ruling against the death sentence for prisoners. She also was someone who fought often for what you might call the underdog. She refused to abandon the fight to protect the rights of the powerless and the disadvantaged. I think another thing that Justice Ginsburg has done throughout her career as a lawyer, which maybe many of you don't know about, but is something she also holds in common with Judge Davidson. And this award was named for Rita C. Davidson after Judge Davidson died at the early age, I believe, of 56 years old. She had been appointed to the Court of Appeals and only had a few years to serve there before her untimely death. She was, in fact, the first woman to serve on the Court of Appeals of Maryland. That's why the Women's Bar has named this award in honor of her. You'll find, if you look through your program and read more about Judge Davidson, that she was also the first at many other things. All of the first you'll see for Judge Davidson, save one having to deal with the requirement that you play sports after college. The rest all deal with standing up for those whose voices are not heard above the din of more powerful voices. And so I'd like to take this time to introduce Judge Mary Ellen Barbera, or Chief Judge Mary Ellen Barbera, who will introduce Justice Ginsburg.
Good evening, everyone. What a delightful evening, wonderful event to have so many fans. I'm sure every one of us in this room is a fan of Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg. And it is my distinct pleasure to be given the opportunity to introduce the Justice as tonight's recipient of the 29th Rita C. Davidson Award. Before doing so, though, if I may, I would like to thank Nancy Sagitano for her leadership as president of the WBA. Nancy's commitment, and I know this is what you already know, her commitment throughout the years to the WBA has been exemplary. I also wish to recognize the work of the past and current officers. Thank you so much for your dedicated service to the members of the association. As you know, the WBA has a rich history of service for more than 85 years, to promote and advance the interests of women in the legal profession. Tonight's event fulfills that mission as we come together to bestow upon Justice Ginsburg the WBA's most prestigious award. The award, as you know, is named, of course, for the Honorable Rita C. Davidson. I did not have the good fortune of meeting Judge Davidson. As she died the year I became a lawyer. But another pioneering woman in the Maryland legal community, Judge Rosalind Bell, and I know you are here tonight, Roz. Thank you so much for being here. A former recipient of this wonderful award had this to say about Judge Davidson. The Honorable Rita Davidson caught one's attention, not because of her physical stature, but because of the intensity of her thoughts and purposes. One can observe a similar intensity of thoughts and purposes in the life and work of Justice Ginsburg. Even the briefest review of her amazing career proves the point. I begin with Justice Ginsburg's tenure on the United States Supreme Court. Since joining the court in 1993, Justice Ginsburg has written, get this, 166 cases for the court, that is the majority opinion for the court, and another 206 cases, which also speaks so profoundly about Justice Ginsburg, she chose to write separately to declare, in either a concurring or a dissenting opinion, her particular view of how the case before the court should have been decided. Although all of the Justice's opinions display her keen intelligence and fierce allegiance to the Constitution and laws of our country, tempered with a deep appreciation of the societal implications of the court's decisions. The intensity of Justice Ginsburg's thoughts and purposes is further revealed by her questions from the bench. Now, I will confess to being somewhat of a Supreme Court watcher, and over the years, I have attended a number of the court's arguments. So I can bear witness to the fact that Justice Ginsburg gives no quarter to anyone. Her probing questions expose the weaknesses and test the limits of any argument made or any theory advanced, whether by counsel or one of her judicial colleagues. Now, I suspect that Justice Ginsburg would not wish me to detail all of her many accomplishments throughout the years. Yet I hope, Justice Ginsburg, you will indulge me as I mentioned just a few of them, so we have a sense of the impressive, ladies and gentlemen, journey that has led the Justice to where she stands today. The trajectory of Justice Ginsburg's career demonstrates that she was and continues to be a way paver. I use this phrase, Justice Ginsburg, rather than the more ubiquitous term trailblazer, because I learned that Justice Ginsburg, while participating in a panel discussion of mothers and daughters in the law, used that very same phrase to describe other women who had forged the path for so many of us, indeed many of us in this room, who hoped one day to pursue a career in the law. A way paver, how apt a description of Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg, as hers is a career marked by numerous firsts. Young Ruth Bader was the first in her immigrant family to attend college, and she graduated first in her class from Cornell University, receiving a Bachelor of Arts degree in government. Justice, you'll stop me if I get any of this wrong, I hope. Ruth Bader married Martin Ginsburg, and like him, albeit a year behind him, attended Harvard Law School, as you heard. By the way, Justice Ginsburg was one of only 9 women in a class of about 500. At the conclusion of her first year at Harvard Law School, Justice Ginsburg ranked first in her class and became the first female member of the Harvard Law Review. This will not, yes. You will hear more first as we go along. I wonder what Erwin Griswold, then Dean of Harvard Law, thought about Ms. Ginsburg's demonstrated superstardom after having asked her, and I understand each of her fellow 8 women law students that year, you know what's coming, I suspect, why she was taking a seat that should be filled by a man. Hard to believe, but I assume that's so. That's amazing. Justice Ginsburg was foreclosed from earning her law degree from Harvard by the happenstance of her husband Marty's obtaining a position with a law firm in New York. Thus it was that Justice Ginsburg completed the final year of her law school education at Columbia Law School. While at Columbia, she served on that school's law review, thereby becoming the first woman to have a place on 2 major law reviews. And no surprise, she graduated first in her class at Columbia. The justice's experience as a way paver and achiever of notable firsts as a woman did not stop upon graduation from law school. But certainly, along the way, the justice herself, and later, when representing others, and now writing for the court on behalf of others, confronted gender-based barriers to opportunities and benefits, both personal and professional. Early on, Justice Ginsburg applied to 14 law firms, but notwithstanding, as you've heard, the most impressive credentials, received not a single offer from any one of them. One of the rejections came from the major law firm where she had been a summer associate. In explanation for that decision, I've read, she was told that the firm said, "We already have our woman lawyer." And somewhat ironically, given where Justice Ginsburg now sits, Supreme Court Justice Felix Frankfurter did not select her for a clerkship because he wanted to continue the court's tradition of hiring only male law clerks. Justice Ginsburg did obtain a clerkship with Judge Edmund Palmieri. Have I pronounced it correctly, Justice? Palmieri, of the United States District Court for the Southern District of New York. Judge Palmieri was obviously an evolved man who did not allow antediluvian notions of gender stand in the way of hiring the best person for the job. Following her clerkship, Justice Ginsburg worked in academia as Associate Director of the Columbia Law School Project on International Procedure, then as a Professor of Law at Rutgers from 1963 to 1972, and from 1972 to 80 as Professor of Law at Columbia, her ultimate alma mater. While at Rutgers, Justice Ginsburg co-founded the Women's Rights Law Reporter, again, the first law journal in the United States that focused exclusively on women's rights. And she co-founded the Women's Rights Project, about which we all know so much. The Women's Rights Project at the American Civil Liberties Union, of course the ACLU, While there, she participated in 34 cases before the United States Supreme Court, winning 5 of the 6 cases she personally argued. Now, anyone who's ever, not I, had the chance to argue before the United States Supreme Court, anyone would be proud to claim that record. In 1980, Ruth Bader Ginsburg was appointed to the United States Court of Appeals for the District of Columbia Circuit. There, for 13 years, Judge, at the moment, Ginsburg, demonstrated the same constellation of skills and talents as a jurist that she had shown as a litigator, a law school professor, and a law student. Thus it was natural and most appropriate, as the capstone of no other word describes it, a brilliant career, that on August 10, 1993, Justice Ginsburg took the oath of office as Associate Justice of the United States Supreme Court, only the second woman in history to be appointed to that court, joining, of course, now retired Justice Sandra Day O'Connor. I mentioned earlier in my remarks that Justice Ginsburg has written numerous landmark cases since joining the court. One case, though, stands out for me as appropriate to highlight this evening. I speak of the 1996 decision, United States versus Virginia, so 3 years or so after the justice joined the court, also known as the VMI case. You may recall the court struck down the Virginia Military Institute's men-only admission policy and thereby opened the doors for women to every U.S. military academy and beyond, really. In explaining the court's decision, Justice Ginsburg noted that the principle of equal protection is undermined, and I quote, "when a law or official policy denies to women, simply because they are women, full citizenship stature, equal opportunity to aspire, achieve, participate in, and contribute to society." These words, I submit, elegant in their simplicity and profound in the message they deliver, hold for each of us a promise of protection under the law. For that, ladies and gentlemen, we thank Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg. So it is, my friends, my distinct honor to introduce to you the 29th Rita C. Davidson Award recipient, the Honorable Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg. And at this time, President Sagitano will join us at the podium, as well as the Justice.
Well, it is my personal pleasure, and I think probably the pleasure of everyone in this room, for the Women's Bar Association to present to you the 29th Annual Rita C. Davidson Award.
The one that was wrong, the introduction, the Chief Judge offered, but I must confess that number 2 is my lucky number. I was the second woman appointed to the faculty of Rutgers Law School in 1962, and the second woman following Pat Wall to be a member of the DC Circuit, and the second woman to be a member of the U.S. Supreme Court. Just a comment about Dean Griswold. Yes, he did have a dinner with the women in the first year class, and after dinner asked each of us in turn to say while we were at the law school, occupying a seat that could be held by a man. But the truth is, he didn't ask that question to wound or offend. Dean Griswold was not noted for his sense of humor. At the law school, I got to law school in 1956. Harvard didn't admit women till 50-51 was the first class with women in it. The dean said there are still doubting Thomases on his faculty who think it was a foolish decision to admit women. So I asked this question, so I will be armed with stories from the women themselves about what they expected to do with their legal education. I won't tell you my answer to this question, but I will tell you the best answer given in my book. It was a lawyer named Flora Schnall, and she said, well, Dean Griswold, there are 9 of us. No, really only 8, because Ruth Ginsburg doesn't count for this purpose. There are 500 odd of them. What better place to find a man? It really is an honor for me to receive an award in the name of Rita Davidson. Rita was a woman both wise and savvy, keenly intelligent, feisty, funny, persistent, and brave. She used her talent to make things better for those outside the in-group, and to promote justice, equal and impartial for all. I think it is fitting to speak tonight about another woman I greatly admire, a woman of courage who would not be put down, a woman who in 1879 made the U.S. Supreme Court change its ways. Her name, Belva Ann Lockwood, her year of birth, 1830. Lockwood was the first woman ever to gain admission to the Supreme Court bar, the first woman to argue a case before the court, and the first woman to run the full course for President of the United States. She was not born to wealth or social advantage. She grew up in a farm family from Niagara County, New York. Widowed and was a child at the age of 22, after only 4 years of marriage, she enrolled in college and gained the training she needed to become a high school teacher and later a principal. She moved to the District of Columbia in 1866, and she remarried 2 years later. And once she was settled in the nation's capital, she began her career on behalf of the advancement of women. She was an ardent suffragist, an advocate for widening employment opportunities for women. And in that connection, she embarked on her long-held ambition to become a lawyer. And that was no easy achievement in days when women were not welcomed at the bar. Her front-runner status was gained by unflagging effort. In 1869, when she was a mother of 2 and 39 years old, Lockwood applied for admission to one of the DC area law schools. Her application was rejected on the ground familiar in those not so good old days. Her presence, she was told, would distract the attention of the young men in the class. Well, Lockwood persevered, and she was finally admitted to National University Law School, that is today George Washington University Law School. But she encountered another impediment when she completed the course of legal studies. The school refused to give her a degree, and the reason again was men in the class graduating with a woman, they feared, would lessen the value of their diplomas. So to overcome that roadblock, Lockwood wrote to President Ulysses S. Grant, who was president ex officio of the university. She wasted no words. I have passed through the curriculum of study and demand my diploma. Well, although the president did not directly reply to that letter, 2 weeks later, in September 1873, the chancellor of the university presented Lockwood with her law degree. In 1876, having practiced law in the district for 3 years, Lockwood met the necessary experience qualifications, and she sought admission to the U.S. Supreme Court bar. The court denied her application 6-3 with this terse explanation. By the uniform practice of the court and by the fair construction of its rules, none but men are permitted to appear before it as attorneys and counsels. Undaunted, Lockwood relentlessly lobbied Congress to grant her plea. She succeeded. Less than 2 years later, in February 1879, Congress passed a law saying any woman presenting the necessary qualifications shall, on motion, be admitted to practice before the Supreme Court. Lockwood's case to me illustrates that sometimes productive dialogue the court can have with Congress. And it shows, too, that sometimes Congress is more in tune with changing times than the court is. My most recent case in point, Lily Ledbetter's. The court said 5-4 that Ledbetter had sued too late. She had been discriminated against for so many years. She waited just too long to complain about it. And I dissented, saying the court had gotten it wrong and Congress should fix it, which Congress did in record time, passing the first measure President Obama signed when he took office, the Lilly Ledbetter Fair Pay Act. Lockwood, now a member of the Supreme Court bar, was the first woman to to argue a case before the court. And the last case she argued, she was then age 75, and it was a case in which she used her skill. Her specialty was suing the government for money. And in this case, she helped secure a $5 million award for the Eastern Cherokee Indians whose ancestral lands had been taken from them without just compensation. Lovewood sought more than just suffrage for women. She argued for full political and civil rights. And though she could not vote, she twice ran for President of the United States, pointing out that nothing in the Constitution barred a woman's candidacy. She took that bold step 124 years before Hillary Rodham Clinton became a contender for the Democratic Party's nomination. In 1884 and 1888, those were her two campaigns, the 2 years in which she campaigned for president. The party on which she ran was called the Equal Rights Party. Lovewood cast a spotlight on some things that were not right about the United States in her time. So she advocated citizenship for Native Americans and repeal of the Chinese Exclusion Act, reform of family law to make it less unfair to women. But she was not a celestial idealist. She used the publicity that attended the 1884 campaign to launch herself silently onto the paid lecture circuit. Before radio, before television, people attended lectures in large numbers. And Lovewood reported that she made enough on the lecture circuit to cover all her campaign expenses, and even came out $125 a head. And people who come to my chambers will see displayed in space occupied by the law clerks a replica of that vote sheet denying Bella Lovewood admission to the court. And next to it there's one of several cartoons that were published during her 1884 run for the presidency against Cleveland and Plain. Not at all flattering cartoons. But she was never intimidated by slights or detractors. And to the end of her life, in 1917, she remained an unflappable optimist. Well, so much has changed for the better since Bella Lovewood's years in law practice. Admission ceremonies at the court nowadays include women in sizable numbers, and it is no longer cause for special note when counsel for both sides is a woman. The women today serve as presidents of leading universities and bar associations, as law school deans, federal judges, state high court judges, elected representatives on the local, state, and federal level, and in high executive positions. Women are currently 1/3 of the membership of the Supreme Court. And when people ask me, well, when do you think it'll be enough? My answer is, when there are none. So, people who were at first astonished by that answer then think, well, for most of the country's history, it has been women linemen, so why not linemen? As for all the progress we have made, and it has been enormous, there is still a need for women of lot with sense and skill, women like Rita, Davidson, women who will contribute to seeing that there is no backsliding and to ensuring that our daughters and granddaughters can aspire and achieve with no artificial barriers blocking their way. Now I have to thank you for listening.
Well, now that I know the answer to why Dean Griswold had asked the questions that he did, I won't be poorly again then. I tell you, you'll tell me more about it.
Tonight's event has been very well attended by our state's judiciary. As you all know already, Chief Judge Mary Ellen Barbera from the Court of Appeals, the Honorable Shirley Watts, the Honorable Sally Atkins, and from the Court of Special Appeals, the Honorable Michelle Houghton, the Honorable Andrea Leahy, the Honorable Douglas Maverick, and the Honorable Michael Reed. We all recognize the fact that this is such a tremendous night, that we have had a very well-attended state judiciary, and rather than going through the very long list of judges from the circuit courts and district courts of various counties, as well as the masters, we would like each of you to stand as we recognize the different counties. From Anne Arundel County, with all the masters, the judges from the circuit court, the judges from the district court, please stand, as well as our distinguished retired judges. From Baltimore County, can everybody please stand? Our circuit court judges, our district court judges, and our masters. From Baltimore City, can everybody please stand? Georges County, we have our judges from Circuit Court, and Carroll County. They are the Circuit Court and the Court of Any other county? Okay. We also have two delegates that have joined us, Delegate Kathleen Pally and a previous Rita Davidson Award winner, Delegate Kathleen Duma. We also have with us from the University of Maryland, Professor Paul Napoli. Now, it's not often at these awards dinners that we recognize a 15-year-old, but tonight we have Leah Smith with us. She is 15 years old. Her mother, Adina Smith, asked if her daughter could attend tonight's event because she has been an admirer of Justice Ginsburg for years, and she's only 15. At 13 years of age, she wrote to Justice Ginsburg every week. She would also put the rest of us to shame because she has read all of her opinions and she devours every article written about Justice Ginsburg. She greatly admires the work that Justice Ginsburg has done to equalize the law for men and women. Tonight, her dreams came true, and she has had an opportunity to meet and dine with Justice Ginsburg. At a time when so many young women are selecting idols that are not worthy of worship, it is a pleasure to see a young woman who has selected an individual who is deserving to be worshipped for her lifetime accomplishments and contributions to the law and women's rights.
I'm very happy tonight to introduce you to two very important groups of women who are here. First, I'd like for all of the past recipients of the Rita Davidson Award to stand. And we would love it if you all would get together with the photographer so we could have a photo of you all. One of the things that came to my attention this year was the fact that the Women's Bar Association does not have a photo archive of any kind. Judge Battaglia, who you all know, is working on her book, Finding Justice, called and asked us if we had photographs of people like Ms. Wallman, I'm sorry, Jeanette Wallman, and Rose Esser and some other people. And I was so embarrassed to say that we did not have a stash of photographs anywhere. So one of the things we have embarked upon this year is creating a photo archive. So in addition to taking these photos tonight, so we will have them for posterity, we also ask that you all dig around in your attics and on your computers for photographs of events from the past for the WBA and send them to us for purposes of maintaining the archive on our website so that they will be around for folks to have in the future. Now, the second group of women is a little bit larger, and I'd also like now the women who have been president of the Women's Bar Association to stand. You may have noticed that some people have stood up for both being president of this organization as well as being recipients of the Rita Davidson Award. These are very special people. And we have with us tonight, as has been mentioned before, but I'd like to mention it again, Judge Rosalind Bell, who was a president of the organization. We have Judge Pam White, who was both the president of the organization and a recipient of the Davidson Award. Is that Judge Tony Clark, who has also been president of this organization and received the Davidson Award. And I know we were expecting Judge Moraglia, but is she here? No, she didn't make it tonight. I'm very sorry to hear that. Now, the other person who yes, thank you, Judge Ann Sunt, who was president of the organization and a recipient of the Rita Davidson Award, at a very critical time in this organization's history, and that has been the underpinning for much of the strength of the Women's Bar for close to the last 20 years, and the Women's Bar's efforts to ensure that the judges appointed by the governor are of the highest qualifications. Now, there is another president I'd like to independently recognize because she was president of this organization more than 50 years ago. Is Connie Petzel still in the room? I was looking at it, I was sort of counting up the years, and I thought, really? Have I gotten to 50? And yeah, Connie was president of this organization more than 50 years ago. Someone who is not with us tonight, but who I would like to recognize, is Rose Zetzer. Rose Zetzer was a woman who was the first woman admitted to the Maryland State Bar Association in about 1946. She was president of this organization between 1941 and 1943. Now, she is, in fact, a first of her own, even in among this organization, because she was again president of the organization almost 20 years after she was president between 1941 and 1943. Rose Zetzer is also important because Rose Zetzer has set an example for so many women in this room, and she is in fact the person who the fellow program that is run by Professor Monopoly, the Women Leadership and Equity Program at the University of Maryland. The fellows there are called the Rose Zetzer Fellows. And tonight we've had members to be so generous as to donate tickets so that fellows in the Rose Zetzer program could attend this evening. So if the fellows in the Rose Zetzer program at the University of Maryland, please stand. Thank you for coming. I know you were missing many graduation parties. And so I know you all are having dessert. Please feel free to continue to enjoy your dessert. But there is one last introduction I would like to make. Somebody who has tried her best to stay off of this podium this evening. As you all may know, if you are members of the Women's Bar, this is the end of my term as president of the Women's Bar, and you have not yet met the incoming president of the Women's Bar Association, Donna Van Sloy. Now, I invited Donna to stand not only because she will be the incoming president, but because she is a person with whom the accomplishments that I have had this year as president of the Women's Bar would not have been had but for her support. In addition, the support of my vice president, Diane Bristow, Diane is responsible for all of the planning that has resulted in this wonderful event, and she has very deftly dealt with my need to know the most intimate details of how this was going to get pulled off. We also have Wendy Zerwitz, who is a member of our board, the secretary. Wendy was just appointed as a master in the Circuit Court for Baltimore County, so we're very pleased to congratulate her on that as well. I have my other board members who are present: Tracy Steedman, Margaret Schweitzer, Mary Lombardo. Oh, and I know I'm missing somebody. Please raise your hand. Oh, Christina Brooking. How could I forget? And Elaine Patrick, who is this organization's past president, has been an invaluable resource to me this year. I also want to thank our executive director, Maria Trigg. This has been Maria's first year as executive director of this organization. She has done an amazing job, and it's one of the kinds of jobs that you all won't really get to see how amazing it has been. She has been working on creating a 21st century database of all of the women and men in the Women's Bar Association, and keeping and trying to locate histories in terms of when people joined the organization and what other important roles they've had in society. She's done a terrific job, and she's even agreed to take on my pet project of the photo archive for the Women's Bar Association. Thank you, Maria. Well, there are definitely two people who I really must mention this evening. I want to thank Meg Oliver, who's here. Meg is on our board. Meg has joined the board and stepped into a situation that not many of us anticipated. And she has done a fabulous job, and she always maintains a great sense of humor and a great attitude to work that is not always evokes that kind of temperament. So we thank Meg very much, and she's going to do it again next year, so we're really happy about that. And then, the best for last, I would like Cynthia Leopard to stand. Cindy Leopard was president of this organization, but before that she was president of the Baltimore County chapter of the Women's Bar Association. This was the same year that I was president of the Montgomery County chapter of the Women's Bar Association. And really this was probably one of the first times that we had met. That was in the year 2000. And Cindy has been a wonderful supporter for the women's bar, but of me especially, and I want to thank her for all of her service to the women's bar. Cindy is about to complete her year as president of the Bar Association of Baltimore City, which is quite an accomplishment, and I want to congratulate her on that. And I also want to thank one other person, and that is my associate, Eden Terenzini. Eden, will you stand? Eden has always, since she started in my office, been my right and left hand. And I really want to thank you for all of your help. So without further ado, I'm going to conclude my remarks and ask you to please enjoy your dessert. The past presidents and the past recipients of the Women's Bar Association and the Rita Davidson Award, please stay so we can take those photos for the photo archive. Thank you very much.